Okay, so hello, assalamu alaikum to everyone. So yeah, this is again one of the episodes of Open Source Connect Bangladesh, which is an initiative from my end and the community to make you guys know about the how open source ecosystem works and something like that. So today, with me we have Annie. So she's been like one of the Sensitive ambassadors, and we've been like kind of hosting Sensitive Cloud Native Live almost weekly. So let me hear from Annie, like what was her experience and so on and so forth. So let me add Annie to the stage. So hey, Annie, how are you?
Hi. Very, very happy to be here. Very excited for
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, awesome. So thank you so much for accepting the invitation. So I would like to know like what you can just introduce yourself, what you are currently doing, and something like that. Then we can proceed, I guess. Yeah, you can introduce
Yeah,
me.
of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie. I'm a CNCF ambassador as well as an Azure MVP, which means that I just love talking about all cloud technology, cloud native Kubernetes container topics, pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So I do a lot of conferences. I have a podcast called Cloud Gossip, as well as all of these kind of things in between. Now I've been organizing a CNCF and Kubernetes meetup since 2017. So it's been a while since I've been in the scene. And as my day job, I'm a CMO at Vision, which is a Swiss both product and consulting company that provides container based solutions. And both we also have a CNCF sandbox project within our house or our little family at Vision and so forth. So yeah, that's what I do
Yeah,
mostly.
awesome. It's like yeah, really awesome. Okay, so I guess we can just talk about like you were mentioning like you have been like doing this kind of things, almost talking, and one important thing was MVP. There are a lot of people who don't know about MVPs, right? So yeah, I knew about the you are one of the MVPs, right? So yeah, in the future, I also want to be one of the MVPs if I can. Okay, so that's good. So can you mention like what was your education? What did you go for a BSc or bachelor's or something? What you did for your bachelor's or something? Can you mention like?
Yeah. So I went to university to study economics and business management. So
Okay.
not a technical degree at all in
Okay.
that way. So
Yeah.
I did courses in project management and actually did like agile project management in courses as well as marketing and economics and all of
Mm-hmm.
these kind of topics, which was a lot of fun. And I did accounting as well, which is always interesting.
Okay.
To be honest, as far as usually people then ask about my technical background. Well, both of my parents are engineers, and actually all three of my father's brothers are as well. So I realized at some
Mm-hmm.
point that essentially, like I grew up around engineers, so I was building computers when I was 6 years old already. So I don't have a formal technical education, but I've always been
Mm-hmm.
around technical, and I think I started coding like very light stuff when I was 13 or 12 or something. So a bit of everything in the mix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you learn coding and so on and so forth. Those were not like your from your academics, right? It was maybe from your family and also from your interest as well, right?
Exactly.
So, like, what was your first job?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good question. So when I graduated, I worked in tech startup scene, particularly, or
Okay.
when I was like in university as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I started in like what I call startup enablement. So I was organizing pitching events. I was organizing
Mm-hmm.
startup conferences. Obviously, it's always like community that's making all of these things happen. But
Yeah.
that was really a lot of fun. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, I organized monthly events that were like, if you know, Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. So, like the investors are pitch, maybe possibly investing
Mm-hmm.
in there and whatnot, and the startups are pitching and so forth. So, these kind of events I was organizing, and from there, because I was very heavily involved with the technical side of the startup scene in general, like the tech startup scene, I started working for Microsoft after that as a startup evangelist,
Okay.
which means that then I was working even more, even heavier with
In.
startups using Microsoft technologies, cloud, and so forth. And from there, I worked at different startups and Microsoft, always in the tech scene. Particularly, I'm focused on technology and infrastructure and coding in general.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess that's how you got involved with Azure, right? Like you were
Yeah,
mentioning MVP, right?
exactly.
So so yeah, so uh, if I'm not wrong, it takes almost 1 year or something like a kind of community activities to be one of the MVPs at least, right?
Exactly. And if you are working at Microsoft, you cannot become an MVP while you're there. Yeah, because they are community people. So I actually
Mm-hmm.
started all of that, as you kind of mentioned there. So I have over 10 years of career in like technology startups and marketing and so forth. But when I started working with like meetups and speaking and everything, I was still actually working at Microsoft. So I could not become an MVP during that time.
Yeah.
And you
Mm-hmm.
can become an MVP after essentially a certain amount of time after you leave Microsoft, because you have to be, and actually, all of your contributions should be community contributions,
Mm-hmm.
and not from like when I was running some workshops at Microsoft or something like that. So there's like a distinction there. So yeah, I became an
Yeah.
MVP 1 year after I left Microsoft. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, this is an awesome journey, I guess. Again, kind of one of the speakers who is not from the tech background and working in tech, right? So I guess this is something students and professionals can take in. Again, that's awesome. Okay, so I guess currently you are working one of the intakes, right? Obviously, you are working with tech, and you have. I guess if I'm not wrong, you have any session on KubeCon, right?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you have any session on KubeCon this time?
Registered. Yeah, I have registered for next week. Yes, I am
Yeah.
very excited for next week in Chicago. Yes, I have a session as well as I'm seeing like an event as well, which is fun. Now,
Okay, so yeah, that was a mentioning because now currently you are talking with tech, you are speaking in technology within technology. So okay, that's great. Now you're mentioning it from 2017, maybe you are working with the CNCF sessions or something like that. So and like you have learned a lot from the community, as you have mentioned, like working with the community, helping, and because while being obviously an MVP, you have to take a lot of sessions and so on and so forth. So the simple question is why? Why should anyone actually come in? Because obviously I think this is something like you are helping, and also it's kind of helping, I guess, helping yourself as well, because you are getting some exposure or knowledge or something. Sometimes a simple thing can might help you a lot, because it might happen someone is trying to refer you, or someone knows like this technology far better, so you might get a job offer as well, right? So why did you, if I would like to ask, like why did you become part of this? Why do you actually host things or arrange things? What is your opinion on these? Like why should anyone go for this? Yeah.
yeah, well, I think contributing to any community, whether that be technological, open source, or whatever, is always usually worthwhile, because I think, well, as far as like, the basis of the why, I think it's all about connecting with people and sharing your passions. And that's truly why people do it. And I guess that's the reason why I do it as well, on a like a very, basic,
Hmm.
Maslow's hierarchy level, I guess. But at the same time, it can, like, working with for example, open source communities together and contributing, it can bring so
Hmm.
many benefits to both, obviously, the open source communities themselves, but also to the careers of people who are doing the contributing and helping around and so forth. So it's even though it's all about community and working together, I think there usually is a lot of personal upside as well that you can experience from there. So that's also one of the reasons why I always recommend for people, even if they want to, only work for a corporate or something. I think it's always good to kind of explore the other communities as well, and see what's out there. As far as
Hmm.
me and why I am involved, well, I think I've always been a very curious and nosy person, to be honest. I think even so,
Yeah.
like, I remember, like, if someone tells me that, oh, there's this new thing, do you want to get involved? And my brain does not go at all into should I not? I'm like, of course I should, and then I get involved, which can also lead to taking on too many things at the same time, or trying to go
Hmm.
and experience everything in a short time. But then you have to remember your like personal boundaries, and the time is limited and so forth. But for me, it's always been more of a why not rather than why itself. And
Hmm.
actually, how I got involved in the cloud native ski scene, particularly because I was involved with meetups and startups and technology and so forth
Mm-hmm.
before that
Mm-hmm.
also. um, that I was working at a infrastructure as a service cloud provider at the time, and we had a young person, Lucas, come in, and he was super excited about Kubernetes, super excited about cloud native. He was a I don't think
Mm-hmm.
even the CNCF ambassador program might not have existed at that time, but if it had
Okay.
been, he would have already been a CNCF ambassador at that point,
Yeah.
when he is
Okay.
nowadays as well. And he was super
Mm-hmm.
excited, and I was like, okay, if this guy is so excited about these topics, this was back in like 2016 or something, there
Mm-hmm.
must be something in it, like because its community is so strong, clearly. Which is
Mm-hmm.
why I then kind of jumped into organizing the meetup with him from the get go. We started the meetup then in Finland with other people, of course, as well. So I live in Zurich, but I'm from Finland, so that's where I kicked up these things.
Okay.
And that's like, I guess I started a path and I never got out of it after after that. Like, I guess, fateful encounter in a way of getting sucked into these topics, which has been a fun ride for sure.
Yeah. This is awesome. Because like I guess as a host, if I am also hosting like the Cloud Until Live or something, you are kind of learning a lot at that time. The period of 1 hour or something you're hosting, you're learning a lot. Or it's not only about hosting; it's about like being organize something. While you are organizing, you have to know what is it, right? So it's also something you're learning on the go, right?
Mm.
So that's awesome. So I guess we have two questions. So let me take those questions. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, so there is one question like you have an extensive background in technology speaking and community building. Like that's what we know. So, what tips would you give someone looking to develop their public speaking and leadership skills within the open source community? So, I guess before you start talking about it, there are a lot of people I know. They are like they have skills, but the fact is they do fear like what will people say when they are talking or something. So that kind of fear never don't actually let them like talk to people or that much of exposure or management something like that. So maybe yeah, I guess you can answer this question on this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very valid question. And to be honest, as far as the fear of going out there and speaking to people, whether that be in just like meeting new people face to face or going on a stage and speaking about things, I don't think it ever goes away. I'm always like cool as a cucumber, like the days going up to a conference, and then like 5 minutes before I go on stage, or even 10 minutes, I absolutely go. I become so nervous. It's absolute insanity. Like I started, playing around these things in my head. Oh, what if this happens? What if, I don't know, I say something silly or something like that. And I don't think it
Hmm.
ever kind of ends in that way. But I think from my side, the benefits outweigh the negatives as far as sharing your story and sharing your passion and sharing your things. And I think for me, what really helps me to remember, on a very like emotional level, is that I think the audience will always be rooting for you. Like, they want you to succeed. Because, for example, technology meetups are a great place to just share with peers, and I think everyone knows that you're a peer when you get up there. No one thinks that you are, mastermind behind the whole universe or something, and you know everything. Like,
Yeah.
I recently we hosted a meetup, and there was a young presenter, and they were presenting, and then an audience member asked some really like hard-hitting questions, and then the person was getting a bit flustered, which is totally
Yeah.
normal after hard-hitting questions. And
Mhm.
then the question asker was like, "Ah, I thought this was your PhD," and then the person was like, "No, no, no, I did a bachelor's thesis on this topic." And then
Okay.
the person was asking the question was like, "Ah, okay, well, then ignore my question completely. It's fine." So I think, like,
Yeah.
if you set the expectations, for example, within your talk, like if your talk is, for example, um, beginners look into Kubernetes or Helm or something, I think the audience will then know that, okay, this is the person's background, this is what they're talking about, this is their level of understanding. So that
Hmm.
always, I think, always helps. And uh, also, like, general tips to develop public speaking and leadership skills. Honestly, for public speaking in particular, I think any public speaking helps. So I kind of, for example, when I was doing I like if I look at back at my career and my learning as far as public speaking goes, it all started in like, doing book reports in elementary school or university or something like this. So like finding any opportunity to start speaking, whether that be, I don't know, finding there's like plenty of meetups that help you with this as well. So I guess there's Toastmasters around the globe and whatnot, where you can just, practice getting up in front of the audience and speaking. I think that's
Yeah.
always super easy. But yeah, I would always start from meetups because they're such a like a loving peer-to-peer community. So it's always like a good place
Hmm.
to kick off things and just go for it because there's really no other solution. You can kind of brew on things and build up your skills and plan things for a bit, but after that, you just have to go for it. There's no other way to go around it. You just
Yeah.
have to go for it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I guess that's the difference between like a course and a study group or meetup. Because when
Mm,
you are teaching a course, you are expected you are like pro in this, right? But
yeah.
when you are kind of talking or speaking in a study group or meetup, I guess it's not. It's like helping each other, something like that. Because I think that's very important for growing community or growing something. Because course is something different, but study groups like you have to feel or the audience also has the real responsibility to make the speaker like feel like yeah, there's no problem, just go for it, something like that. So yeah, that's great. So I guess from my experience in Bangladesh, there's no that kind of cloud native or study group or meetup something.
Mm,
So that's great that I think what I see or how I came up with the solution is like if no one has done that, no problem, I can do it. Okay, so yeah, I just found that cloud native Bangladesh, I guess last year or so, something like that. So now it's going great. We are just expecting and expanding into school and colleges as well. So that's great. We're taking the initiatives, I guess. So that this series is also part of that, right? Just
mm.
letting people know like what they can do or something. This is the motivation part. Like they are going to motivate by you guys and so on, and the technical part is handled by us, like teaching them like the important technologies in open source and so on. Okay, I guess there is another question. So let's take that question. And yeah, so yeah, you said like you helped co-organize a Kubernetes and CNCF Finland meetup starting in 2017. So what were some of the keys to growing and sustaining an impactful local meetup community over time? Because yeah, I guess you experience might help us as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I don't think I've cracked the code on everything that you need to do like a sustainable and impactful meetup
Yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah, because volunteer activities are always a bit tricky. Because everyone is volunteering their time, so there is no kind of it's not mandatory for anyone to do anything. So you really have to um find, I guess, the why. But everyone has to first have the individual why and then the group why, the community why, and why are we doing these things and what kind of benefits does
Mm,
it bring to us. Um, and To be honest, I think the number one key is to have um, really, well, not dedicated, but like engaged couple people leading to an extent, or at least like nudging people to do stuff from the get go. That then can kind of delegate the stuff because I think a lot of people want to help, want to contribute, but people are very unsure on how to get started. And I think that's completely understandable. If I'm becoming a new member in a new community myself, I'm always like, okay, how does this work? How do I start? How does anything work and so forth? So I think it's understandable that you might need some help. And obviously the help you can do a lot of work around that, for example, by creating really good documentation. And by this I don't mean like code documentation, I mean like, okay, how does someone speak at the meetup? How does one become an organizer of the meetup? How to sponsor, how to help out? Because what I've noticed, for example, as well, if we find someone who's excited about the topic, they might get their company to sponsor, or they might speak at the meetup first, and then they might, they might talk to me or our core organizers more, and then they might become an organizer after that as well. So it's like take it step by step essentially, because you cannot just expect as an organizer for to just pop into your meetup and then kind of become impactful members without any sort of help or nudging into kind of certain direction. So support is key, help is key, but also kind of really, I think, creating moments for all of the volunteers or people in your community where they can help. So it's always obviously a bit here maybe just thinking to yourself, but that's not gonna be leading to very sustainable meetup. Then you're just gonna be doing everything alone, and then when you stop, nothing will happen. So the key is to be like, I was part of one community once where we were always talking about,
Annie, I guess I'm kind of can't hear your voice properly.
can you hear better
Oh,
now? Is it
yes,
better
now.
if I get them closer? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah, I
so
guess so.
I'll get closer to the mic. So, to be honest, in like I was just giving an example of one way that like for one community where I was part of, for example, on
Hmm.
involving new members was always like you can always help carry some chairs, and obviously like it's good to maybe do a bit more other exciting tasks, just carrying chairs, but I think you always have to start from somewhere. So being like
Hmm.
not just carrying the chairs alone, and this can be a figurative chair as well, so it can mean finding the speakers or the sponsors or posting to social media about the meetup. But instead of just doing it alone, saying around to the people in your community, like, hey, I'm about to carry some chairs, or post to
Hmm.
social media. Might someone want to help me? Or would like also maybe name a person, like, hey, would two of you want to help, and so forth. And I think
Yeah.
that usually helps a lot. And it's really about keeping the community engaged as well as like everyone contributing, because that's community rather than just someone directing people somewhere. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's something actually very interesting. So here the most important part in my community or others is like, so involving students into study groups or these things sometimes becomes a kind of, yeah, they don't find actually what happens when they're doing the bachelors or something, they're expecting like to know the topic. So in the open source or something, the education, the academic, in the academics we don't have this kind of things, to be honest, like what we are learning in the job, right? So you're talking about Kubernetes, we don't even learn about this. So I guess for them they always expect like something that they can relate to or something that is beneficial to them. But actually what happens in open source is, or the communities, like you start with like contributing for free or something, maybe later on you can learn a lot, you can help a lot, you, that's the connectivity you get, right? You get to know about people, you get to know might be, and when maybe there is any post or opening any post there, so you can just apply there as well, right? So you're learning for free, you're helping for free, but it's also giving you the exposure, right? So there's something is many students don't understand here, like it's not only like you are helping the community or you are being in the community for free or something. So I guess that's the very difficult part for me here in my community, like engaging people, especially students, because they, first of all, they don't understand the topics, and that's how and if that's the point, like they don't know, they don't understand what's going on, they don't want to engage actually. So I guess that's something. And to solve that issue, I guess we what I started was like starting with cloud native glossary project. So that's like only localizing that or like kind of documentation. So kind of they're learning like what is this sensitive term something, then they can like become involved into the sensitive ecosystem or the Slack something. Then I guess then gradually they can learn a lot, or they can gradually talk about others as well. Okay, so I guess another questions pop up. So okay, as the host of Cloud Gossip podcast, like what advantages do you see in using audio as a medium over writing blogs? Oh, great. Creating videos or organizing meetups. So yeah. So yeah,
It's a good question,
right.
yeah. So, well, it's a bit of a tricky question, to be honest, at the same time, because there is advantage to using all of these mediums, and I think it depends on the content creator, on what feels most natural for them and what makes the most sense. Well, okay, obviously you should always start with like where the audience is and who do you want to actually reach and so forth, being the number one criteria when you're deciding the medium that you're going to be using. But this is the marketer in me now coming out, which is like about persona analysis and everything. But as far as me creating Cloud Gossip podcast, for example, well, it was actually quite simple. When we started the Cloud Gossip podcast in 2018, 2019 or something like that, it's been a while already. um,
Okay.
then there wasn't that many podcasts around, and we couldn't actually even find almost any like cloud. There was maybe some generic technology podcasts, but usually more to like B2C apps and whatnot, that kind of stuff. So there wasn't a lot of like container or that kind of audio material around. So we felt like, okay, this is probably something that people would benefit from. So that was the kickoff, and we felt like this was something that was needed in the scene. And then also for us, podcast then was just seemed to be like an easy way to approach it, because whenever you are creating, for example, any type of content, you always have to worry about the different sides of it. So, for example, now within this stream, we have to worry about ourselves in camera. We have to worry about how our microphone is working. Like I had a bit of
Yeah, yeah,
some hiccup there and so
yeah.
forth. But with the audio, you only have to worry about audio. And I know that
Mhm.
nowadays a lot of podcasts also have a video format and so forth. So there's a it can be a mix of things. But we felt that it was super interesting and like a great challenge for us as well to only control the audio aspect and really like focus on that, to really think about, okay, how do we say these things? How do we explain these things without actually visuals? Because usually if you're doing a video, you can use, for example, okay, if you're talking through, okay, what is a container, you can show some images, you can show some visualizations and so forth.
Mhm.
But with
Yeah.
audio, you only have like your words to describe, and we thought that that was a great challenge that we wanted to take on. Yeah.
Mm. So I guess gradually the time passes, and it will be like yeah, people do want to hear, because I guess just to hear, if my I talk about my experience or something, it's like people is used to listen to radios. Okay, so now, and talking about podcast, it is like a specific topic the speaker and the host is going to talk about. But right now or something like people can actually relate much more when it is kind of interactive, right? So
Yeah.
maybe images, videos, or maybe a physical event, right? So gradually it is just going to it will go into that way, obviously. But podcast is something like you can just talk and so on. But the question here was like there is obviously blogs and others videos or meetups. So you were like mentioning like podcast has its own problem as well, and also some solves as well, right? So kind of the question, I guess he wanted to like listen like why podcast, I
Mm.
guess one of the things might go in that is like, is there anything like that in that time it was famous like going for podcast or something, or rather than this, it was like you wanted to just talk about it, not like going want to bother about like video or something, just you guys want to talk about the cloud or something like that. So what is that issue? It was like people who are doing a lot of podcasts, because sometimes we have to think about like what is currently happening in the community, right? So people are actually going for a lot of podcasts. Even if you talk about the COVID period, so that time I used to see in the Twitter space, there were like a lot of Twitter space happening in night and so on. So it was in that period it was happening a lot. Right now it doesn't happen that much, but that time it was happening a lot. So was it part of that, or something like yeah, let's just start or something like that? It was so what it came up actually, yeah.
Yeah, so for us, it was mostly about kind of us wanting to try it, and then kind of seeing that, okay, there's not too much of this content around, so going for it. Essentially, we didn't like think about it like in in very philosophical senses then, but also
Yeah.
like when you're thinking about like what are the advantages there. Well, I think podcasts, I have like when you listen to them, you're also free to do quite of a lot of other stuff. Like you can either, I don't know, a lot of people listen to podcasts when they're cooking or driving a car and so forth.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of advantages there. So I think tapping into that, as far as like when you're a listener, that's really great because you can go for a walk, for example, and listen to a podcast. That's how
Hmm.
I walk my dog around and I listen to podcasts. That's really helpful. You get some exercise as well.
Yeah.
So providing interesting content in all different forms, I think it's super helpful. So that was
Mhm.
also one of the like things that we considered, that okay, there's video content around, and there was podcasts around as well, but not as many as there's nowadays. So it was beneficial to have some.
Okay. Yeah. So the last voice was, I guess, again cut down. So the yeah.
Ah, I don't
So
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no issues. So yeah, I can hear you properly now. Okay, that's awesome, because every medium is actually have its own benefit and cons, pros and cons, something like that, obviously. So because why I was kind of referring to this thing was like talk you like anyone have to write blogs, or there might video or something. So everything has its own benefit, because when you are talking about blogs, uh, the person who is going to read the blog actually need some time, right? The step by step you
Yeah.
want need to study, read it right down. Might be if there is any problem, he or she is stuck, then the solution might not be there into the blog. But in general, in the videos or something, like this person is stuck it here. So there are a lot of resources in the video. So every medium has its own benefit on something like that. So that's awesome. Okay, so I guess another question from Adyan. So the question is, how do you see the adoption of cloud native technologies impacting various industries? So I guess you have been like hosting a lot, and you've been talking into the communities and so on and so forth. So these might be a very good question, and like if you would like to like kindly answer about it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a big question for sure. Like a good question, but a big question in a lot of ways. And I see, well, the simple answer, I see it impacting a lot, and that's it. Like across all industries where it impacts. But I think it's really interesting to find out, like, okay, when we well it also kind of depends on like how do you define cloud native technologies or whatnot and so forth, of where do you see the impact and that way. But I particularly myself, when I'm discovering like new I love discovering issues and or like troubles within technology use or like cloud native space, because that's usually where if you see an issue that's unresolved, people usually start solving it, which then leads to more technological solutions, which is I think a great way to like no one can know the future, but you can kind of maybe start being like, okay, maybe there could be something there that could be happening there if there's an issues that are unsolved. And I think finding those is always super interesting to me. And now, so I'm speaking in KubeCon about AI and ML ops as well as I'm hosting the AI hub. So like I'm being the MC there as well. So I'm gonna be doing like a really deep dive within KubeCon into AI topics in general. But I've been doing that for the past year as well. As well to do the sessions that I've been doing around ML ops and AI. And what I find very fascinating, like immediately when you start, like when the whole bloom around AI with ChatGPT and all of these coming out, and like the general public really waking up to the advancements in generative AI, for example, and the technology in that space. And everyone being like, oh, this is really cool, this is really nice. But actually, when you dig a bit deeper than just like the surface level of, oh, ChatGPT works really nicely and so forth, you will find out that, okay, over 50% of models that are developed, so AI models that are developed by, data scientists, AI engineers, and so forth, never make it to production. Like over
Okay.
50% never make it to actually see any sort of like, make it to production, make it to be providing value to any end user and so forth in that way. Uh, and actually, so the bottleneck there is usually can be cloud native technologies, and it's the bottleneck or like the solution for that bottleneck can be cloud native technologies and Kubernetes, for example. So when you have these, like, because when you're doing ML ops and AI development and so forth, developing an AI model might take X amount of time, like a couple weeks, whatever, however complicated it is. But then actually taking that into production might take
Mm-hmm.
months, because it requires the data scientists, the AI engineers, the DevOps people, everyone to work together, which is always obviously takes a bit of time, and actually
Mm-hmm.
making sure that everything works in production. So then if we take like all the benefits that Kubernetes and its like scalability, portability, customizability, and so forth, and we apply into that, for example, AI industry, which is a tech industry itself, but still, we can actually start solving those bottlenecks about the models not making into production down the road. So even in this kind of topic where the impact is like within the tech sphere, I think it's super interesting. Let alone when we can think about, for example, in general, what cloud native or cloud or like AI or what are these like can make possible in healthcare, in finance, or in or like I find IoT stuff super interesting as well. So like optimizing factories and so forth, that's always super fascinating as well. And there will be and there has been and there will be huge impact on those places as well when you get really working with all of these topics as well.
Yeah. So when was hosting one of the sessions in Cloud Native Live, so I was I was talking with one of the kind of I would like to say is organizer or kind of startup. So that startup was like they came up with a solution which was basically IoT based.
Mm.
So it was maybe Japan based or something like that. Say startup. So they were like solving using cloud native, and they're basically using IoT devices and solving and in the live. So it is interesting. Like cloud native is kind of like you were talking about. You were going to speak on AI and ML ops, something like that. So it's also kind of connecting with cloud native. So it's kind of interesting to me as well, because I also saw there are a lot of events and activities or something that's going on. And AI, I just forgot something AI Dev or something like that. There is
Mm.
maybe some kind of activity or session or something like that from Cloud Native, a Computing Foundation. So I was wondering how actually AIML or something is integrated with kind of cloud native or something. I actually don't know right now, but it is very interesting to me. And you were like talking about these like kind of how the production model and production you were talking about that. So it's very fascinating. I guess if the after the KubeCon, I would love to actually hear you session or actually watch the session. Like what is it and what is how is we are kind of using cloud native in AI or ML ops. Okay, so I guess we're just going to take the last question
Yeah.
from here. So, as someone who is an ambassador for the cloud native community, how do you encourage more diverse voice to be heard? Mm,
Yeah, it's an incredibly important question, but there's always kind of also one of the, I guess, the trickiest questions, because truly the answer should always be in any way we can, and in any possible point that we can, we should encourage diverse voices. It is so highly important. But obviously then on a day-to-day basis, it's always easy to, I guess, for a lot of people to forget and maybe not think about it, but I think it's so important to think about it constantly as well. And I think it goes into, for example, if you're running a meetup, making sure that you have diverse voices in the speaker, lineup that you have. If you are organizing a conference, making sure that you have a diverse lineup there. Or if you are even okay, talking about AI, if you're thinking about the guardrails for your AI and the safety concerns, it is incredibly important to think about other perspectives and
yeah.
involve the people that are impacted by the decisions that you're making with your technology as well, and so forth. But when you're talking about meetups or like conference organizing and providing like a literal voice, so like giving a mic to a person, I think it's so important to not actually just like sit down and wait and hope like, oh, like I hope that more diverse voices will sign up or something like that, but
Mhm.
actually go out and find them, because you have to really encourage them. You really have to find these. Or, for example, if you don't have enough diverse voices in your upcoming event, you do. It's your responsibility as the event organizer to go out and find people. There's great resources from like finding the CNCF ambassador list if or they're asking their from people there who are engaged with diverse communities, for example, for giving recommendations for voices or speakers and so forth.
Mhm.
And I think it's also super important because whenever you do like the first time that you're making these like efforts, it might take a bit of more time, but it's kind of like a snowball that gets rolling down the mountain, and it's gonna kind of increase in volume as you go on. Like I had a friend who's in venture capital and VC, and she was working for a fund, and the fund had almost no female entrepreneurs applying for funding or like discussing funding, and then they hired that person, so a female VC investor, and after
Yeah.
that they saw a huge boom in the amount of female entrepreneurs talking with them about funding. So like you have to kind of make the first effort and obviously continue to make the effort, but after you do them, you're going to see the positive effects in representation, in the amount of people that you can engage with, in the amount of community that you have, and the kind of positive effects there as well, which will then lead to more as kind of like the snowball goes down the mountain and
Yeah.
gathers more speed. So small changes can actually make big impact in that way.
Mhm. So yeah, obviously, it's not only about like campuses of cloud native community or something. It's kind of when you are being one of the anything you're organizing. I think it's much more people to appreciate something these kind of things, like kind of making the community diverse and inclusive, right? Okay, so I guess just a few days back we have a bunch of new CNCF ambassadors joining in, right? It was kind of the fall 23. That's great. So there are a lot of people who actually do knock me like how to become part of the Saints of Ambassadors or something. So what I actually did, talk with Katie about it, like something like that. So, but I would also like to know about you, like from you, like
Mm.
what do you think, what it takes to be one of the Saints of Ambassadors?
Yeah.
Because I guess they're helping a lot, right? The
Yeah.
ambassadors. Yeah.
Uh, well, the answer is also it's there can be a simple answer or a complicated answer. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
ways to become an ambassador, but I think the minimum kind of thing is have a passion for technology and share it to the world in some way. So usually, at least in all like ambassador programs and so forth, it doesn't really matter. Are you writing blog posts or are you speaking at conferences? Are you organizing a meetup, or are you answering people's questions in Stack Overflow, or are you doing like a really great work as a maintainer and helping people get started in your kind of project and so forth? Whatever the way it
Mhm.
is sharing your passion and your knowledge about tech is usually what the way to go. And obviously then um, applying that to cloud native things, and then you should be on your way to become a cloud native ambassador. But
Yeah.
it is I've seen, like, for example, from the one of the organizers, the new organizers of the Finnish meetup, Mariam.
Mhm.
She became an ambassador in the fall batch now, and she
Okay.
started as an organizer for the meetup a few months ago ish, or like within this year. And then she's speaking at KubeCon next week,
Yeah,
virtually.
that's great.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's so exciting and super nice to see people kind of like, really starting to share, because she's been in there in like tech space for a long time, but like really starting to share these things and helping out with these and so forth. And then it can happen actually quite fast from there on. So it's really cool.
Yeah, basically it's not like if that question has to be answered, it's not like anyone should like prepare for being a sense of member. So there's nothing there actually. It's basically if you're into this ecosystem helping people, this is what they want, right? So
Yeah.
they're just promoting you, like just giving you something like, yeah, you have been selected as an ambassador, but before that you were someone who are kind of helping community or doing those stuffs, right? Talking about cloud native or so on and so forth. So if people are doing something like that, obviously they will get into it. So yeah, so this is how I think things should be thought, right? So rather than preparing for something, it's maybe if you are working in that ecosystem, go and find out what are the good things happening or what are the folks doing. So I also came to know about this program is the sensitive ambassador program through like from LinkedIn. People who are like some people are just if you talk about the last one, right, the for
Mm.
spring session we entered, right? So but before that maybe this program was kind of paused for a while, years, I guess it was kind of I don't know what was happening, something like that. But people
Yeah.
actually used to know like these people are very much impacting and helping the community, something like that. So yeah, that's how I came to know from the LinkedIn. But yeah, I also kind of I started with working with the sensitive glossary project and so on. I started the community cloud in Bangladesh and so on, and I guess that's how I got the opportunity. But when I was talking with Katie, the same question was coming up. So what she was saying is like people contributing not only in one platform. She wants like you contributing in many ways, might be
Mm.
writing blogs, might be taking session, might be organizing and so on. So that's what they're looking for basically. So yeah, that's great. So a lot of new folks coming up into the kind of our ecosystem, cloud native
Exactly.
community foundation ambassador program.
Yeah. And I can always stress to people that it's okay to take a bit of time. Like you will not necessarily, well, I said the example about Mariam becoming now an ambassador, and that's amazing. And shout out to her. But
Mhm.
it's always fine to take your time as well. I started organizing the meetups in 2017, as I said. And I think I became an ambassador in 2020 or 2021,
Mhm.
like before the 2.0 program, but
Yeah.
within the kind of the lull in some ways. So as you can see, there was a gap of a few years when I started organizing and then becoming an ambassador. I didn't really even apply then, because I was focused on, kind of as you said, just contributing and doing my best, and kind of working there. And then I kind of woke up one day and I was like, maybe I should apply. I think I've done kind of
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff and then I applied and so forth. So it's okay. You don't have to like become an ambassador in like couple weeks or year or even like in years. Like it's okay to take your time and grow into the contributions that you're making and learn as you go. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not only about the ambassador program. This, I guess, working. This goes for jobs as well, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to go for any job, just you need to prepare earlier or something. You are just, if you're just doing, or you're based in what you're learning, so I guess you are going to get the job, because we need you, or people need you actually, into the community or into the organization, right? So yeah, that was a kind of, yeah, I guess we can end our session now. And yeah, that was an awesome session, learning a lot from you, kind of how you started, and also the meetups and so on. So because it will actually help our community folks a lot. So thank you so much, Annie, for your valuable time, and very kind of good wishes for the KubeCon, right? So best of luck to the KubeCon session and the
Yeah.
Chicago. So yeah, I'm eager to actually watch your session after that. Okay,
Awesome.
so thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you so much for here, and yeah, I guess we can just now end the session, right? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Okay,
having
so
me.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, so thank you so much, guys, for attending the session, and we can now that's the end and wrap up. I guess we will see you again into any other session with any other guest. So yeah, that's it, and bye bye.